It's that time again. Time to do the dishes. I'll be right back. That joke failed because I walked that way, but the door's actually here. Right, I won't play around. It's the Halloween season. It's October. It's time for the spooks, the scaries. I've never been that into this sort of season, but I do love the atmosphere that it kind of brings around, the dark, creepy, mysterious. I've kind of embraced it a little bit when it comes to creating different videos themed like Halloween sort of stuff. So I decided, why not do a music kind of Halloween video.
10
albums that could function as the soundtrack to your next Halloween party, or maybe just a personal listening session where you want to listen to some music that would set up a bit of a creepy, harrowing mood. I think that these albums are some of my favorites when it comes to evoking this kind of atmosphere. First off, I want to start with something a little easygoing, or a little more accessible and poppy. Something with catchy and sweet melodies and songwriting, but behind it all is a bit of a dark, dusky, gloomy atmosphere and mood, as well as just some lyrics that deal with antisocial themes. Timbre with Creep On, Creepin On. Yep, the title pretty much gives it away.
Oh, I buried my head in my hands, I buried my heart there in the sand.
Definitely could be the playlist for like a gothic prom. And number 2, I figured it would kind of not make sense if I didn't include one of the most iconic artists when it comes to creating creepy music, Tom Waits. And he was so essential for this list that I actually struggled to pick which album to pinpoint in this video. It could have been some of his freakier, more off-the-wall releases like Swordfish Trombones or Bone Machine. However, I decided in the end to go with Blood Money, his 2002 release, which is so blood-caked and almost whimsical in a way.
Measure is the river of the world. Measure is the river of the world.
At number 3, another artist infamous for having a lot of shock value, as well as just creating some very harrowing music during the early parts of his career. I would talk about Nick Cave and his Bad Seeds. I would totally recommend checking out the rest of his discography if you end up enjoying this guy's music. He is a legend when it comes to writing music that's got that darkness behind it. But for this case, it's got to be the notorious Murder Ballads. Quite literally a collection of short horror stories, but in musical form. It's brilliant.
As if she soared into the heart of her final blood-soaked night. Those lunatic eyes, that hungry kitchen knife.
At number 4, I decided, why not throw in some freak folk into the mix? Some folk music that's just a little bit more off the wall and unhinged and wild. Exuma with Exuma II.
They said, "We'll put your souls at rest."
Not only is this album amazing for channeling the styles of calypso and Caribbean music, but also the way that Exuma performs these songs. They do sound like the music that you'd hear in an occult forest ritual of sorts. The instrumentals based on acoustic guitars are amazing. I love the way they strum the guitars so wildly and unhinged. It could appeal to someone who loves an Animal Collective album like Sung Tongs. Some folk music that's that wild, and I love the lead singer's passion. For more freak folk, I would definitely recommend one of the essentials in this genre, Comus's first Utterance. A lot of people who are familiar with freak folk already know about this, but for someone who may not be as familiar, this is definitely an essential one. Disturbing stories if you dig into the lyrics, but also the string arrangements and the idiosyncratic, whimsical, and rather enchanting vocal performances. I just think this is a fantastic record to put on if you want to feel like you're trapped in a dark forest, lost, and suddenly red eyes, glowing red eyes appear around you, and then suddenly a living tree outstretches its branch and taps you on the shoulder. At number 6, an album that I love more than I love myself, Slint's Spiderland.
Creeping up into the sky.
This is one of my favorite records of all time because of how well it builds up this creepy atmosphere, from the amazing storytelling in the lyrics, which kind of builds up from this creepy carnival story on the first track to the devastating climax, the explosive climax on that explosive climax. On the final track, I also love how low-key the album can be at times. Then suddenly it'll surprise you with this explosive musical boom of fury. Then I feel like I've got to showcase some of those more abstract musical releases that could side a bit more on the ambient field. Scott Walker, who is a baritone singer that originally released some of the most beautiful and gorgeous vocal pop, and then during the 2000s he released The Drift, which was easily one of the scariest albums I've listened to. It's like this complete contrast between these different moods.
She entered the palazzo at night by a side door.
But I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely fantastic the way the way the orchestra arrangements are used to their full advantage and really build those sinister, flat-out scary soundscapes. And speaking of scary soundscapes,
Ben Frost's 2009 album By the Throat.
definitely something to listen to if you want to listen to some ambient music but you also want to shite yourself. At number 9 is a hip-hop release, and a lot of people might think of Gravediggers when they think of scary or horror themed rap releases, but actually I think Lil Ugly Mane deserves a shout out.
Standing in the rain, feeling bad about the mamas losing jobs over the rocks that I'll be passing out and blast them out.
Because Lil Ugly Mane portrays the viewpoint of maybe like a supervillain who's deeply embedded in this drug-filled violence glorifying lifestyle, but he's very self-aware about it. He knows all the damage he's causing to people. It's not deep music necessarily, but it's just a really interesting spin on Memphis rap. It sounds cold and sinister and absolutely harrowing. And to finish off this list, I had to kind of give a shout out to not only one of the greatest TV shows in existence, Twin Peaks, and not only the soundtrack, the original soundtrack of Twin Peaks, but also the Shoo Shoo covers album of that soundtrack of Twin Peaks. One of my favorite albums of last year, where Shoo Shoo, the industrial / post-punk outfit, decides to do a whole bunch of different covers of the multiple music tracks that you would hear during the show. And the way that Jamie Stewart is able to bring his own spin and flavor to those musical pieces is brilliant, and he also straddles the line between the beautiful and the creepy. And there you go, those are 10 albums that you should listen to if you want to get the spooks. There are still other albums I would suggest, and you can check them out by looking in the chart and the description. And yeah, if you made it through this entire video, I thank you a lot. I love doing these lists, and I appreciate that you took the time to check them out. And if you check these albums out and you ended up enjoying them, that would make my day even better. Enjoy the rest of the festive season. Bye.